The man took his coffee. The dog sat beside him. Grace handed it over quietly, her smile calm, her hands steady. But the moment didn't last. Her boss stood nearby, watching everything. He didn't shout. He didn't even look upset. Just cold, flat. "You're done here, Grace." 6 years. Gone in one line. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She undid her apron, her hand trembling a little, and walked out. Not because she broke a rule, but because she stood up for someone who served. She stood up for a veteran and his service dog. What Grace didn't know was someone filmed it all. The quiet stand, the calm refusal, the unfair firing. Before the morning rush ended, the ground itself seemed to shake. For military Humvees rolled up to the parking lot. A Marine colonel stepped out, full dress blues, rows of medals, a man who owed his life to the same veterans. Grace protected Dot. From that moment, everything changed. Grace Donnelly wasn't someone people noticed right away, but no one ever forgot her. She was 35. She managed the Mason Mug Cafe, tucked at the edge of downtown Mason, Georgia. It was only 15 minutes from Fort Granger, one of the largest Marine bases in the Southeast. The town was old school. Big trees lined the streets. Flags flew on nearly every porch. And the hardware store hadn't changed since the 80s. But inside, the cafe, it felt different. Softer, warmer. Because of Grace, she didn't treat it like a business. It was more like a second home, a place where tired people, whether from work or war, could come in and feel human again. There were no fancy drinks, no glittery signs, just strong coffee, free refills, and sticky notes full of love pinned behind the counter. But what made the Mason Mug special wasn't the drinks. It was Grace. She knew everyone. She remembered birthdays. She remembered which regulars served, when they deployed, and who came back quiet. She knew who liked burnt toast and who hadn't touched caffeine since Afghanistan. She never pushed anyone to talk, especially not veterans. She made room for their silence. Every Wednesday at 9 a.m., the cafe held something called Heroes Hour. It started small, just 3 veterans, her father-in-law Ben, a retired Marine drill instructor, Ralph, a Vietnam vet who rarely spoke, and Louisa, a nurse with a laugh that rang like wind chimes. Then more came. Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. They came for the woman, not the menu. Each Wednesday, Grace said the same thing. This is a place to be seen, not fixed. And they nodded, shoulders softened. Coffee was poured, stories were shared. Some made people laugh, some made people cry, some had no words at all. Grace rarely talked about her own story, but everyone in town knew. Her husband, Staff, Sergeant Michael Donnelly, died in Afghanistan 6 years ago. His photo hung over the register, not in uniform, in a flannel shirt, holding a mug, sitting outside the cafe 2 weeks before his last deployment. He never came home. Grace never dated again, never tried. Instead, she poured her grief into that cafe, not to run from pain, but to build something real with it, something that helped others. And people didn't just love her for it, they respected her. Veterans called her ma'am without a joke. Teens held the door for her. The mayor stopped by once a month just to thank her, but Grace didn't do it for attention. It was always about the mission, the quiet one, the kind you don't get medals for. Each time she poured coffee for a vet too anxious to sit near others. Each time she stepped out from the counter to check if someone looked lost. Each time she let a dog nap under a table without making a fuss. It wasn't about rules. It was about instinct. It was about love. And on that Wednesday morning, the day everything flipped, it all started the same. The bell over the cafe door chimed. The regulars came in. Coffee brewed. Mugs clinked. The room filled with warm talk and the soft buzz of comfort. Grace didn't know it yet, but by sundown, her little cafe would be at the center of a storm that would reach all the way to Washington. And it started with a man, a dog, and a woman who would not step aside. The sunlight was cold, but bright that day. Steam rose from coffee like little ghosts. Grace stood behind the counter, hair pinned back, sleeves rolled. She had already brewed the dark roast for Heroes Hour. She was setting out the ceramic mug she saved just for veterans. Then the door opened. Again, Ray McMillan walked in. Shadow, his service dog, walked beside him. Ray was quiet, a newer face, late 50s, former Marine recon. He never said much. He never stayed long, but he came, and that meant something. Shadow was a black lab and German shepherd mix. The red vest said it clearly, "Service dog. Do not pet." Grace gave Ray a wave. "Window tables open," she said with a smile. He nodded, "Quiet thanks," and guided Shadow to the back corner. But then the air changed. The door swung open again, and in walked Trouble, asterisk. The man who stepped in didn't smile, didn't blink, didn't even look curious. He wore a navy blazer, sharp pants, and carried a clipboard like it was a weapon. His name tag said it all. Logan Prescott, State Health Inspector. Grace wasn't expecting him. She greeted him politely. "Can I help you with something?" she asked. "Inspection," he said. No warning, no warmth. He moved through the cafe like a machine, tapping metal surfaces, checking labels, opening fridges. Then he froze, his eyes locked on Shadow, the dog resting beside Ray's chair. "That animal," he said loudly, pointing across the room, "is in violation of health code. No animals allowed where food is served." The cafe went silent. Conversation stopped. Grace stepped out from behind the counter. Calm, careful, steady. "He's a registered service dog," she said. "Under the law, he's allowed." Prescott narrowed his eyes. He scanned the cafe like he expected someone to back him up. "I don't care what the vest says," he barked. "Animals carry hair, drool, allergens. If you want to keep this cafe open, that dog needs to leave." Ray didn't move. His hand gripped the coffee mug. Shadow stayed still too. Just looked up at Ray like he was waiting for a signal. Grace took a breath. Then she said what she knew might cost her everything. "I'm not asking a veteran to leave," she said. "And I won't ask a service dog to leave either." She stood tall. "No yelling, just truth. You can write whatever report you want, but you'll have to live with the fact that you tried to shame a man who served this country in front of the people he served it for." Someone in the back muttered, "Damn right." But it didn't end there. Right then, another woman walked in. She wore heels, a business blazer, and the air of someone who liked control. Deborah Lyle, regional manager for the Mason Muggs parent company. She had shown up early for a routine visit, just in time to see everything. Her eyes were sharp. Her voice, cold. "Grace Donnelly," she said, "you've just broken a health compliance rule in front of a state official. Pack your things. You're fired." The cafe gasped. Someone dropped a spoon. Ray stood halfway, shocked. Grace didn't speak. She looked around the room. At Ray, at Shadow, at the chalkboard that read, "Heroes are free coffee for vets." She gave a tiny smile. Then, with shaking hands, she untied her apron, folded it, set it down on the counter. She turned to Lena, the young barista at the espresso machine. "Make sure Ray gets his refill," she whispered. Then she walked out the side door into the morning sun. No one followed, but someone had been recording. A phone, quiet in the corner, had captured it all. A quiet act of courage. A woman fired, not for breaking a rule, but for refusing to break her soul. And far away, inside an office lined with medals and memories, a phone rang. Colonel Richard Gaines picked it up. He did not ignore the call. For 35 minutes, the Mason Muggs cafe was dead quiet. Customers whispered. Some left without finishing their drinks. Others sat frozen, staring out the window like they were waiting for the wind to explain what just happened. Lena stayed behind the counter. Her hands shook as she poured Ray's second cup. "I didn't know what to say," she later admitted. "But I knew if I walked away, I'd be letting her down." Ray sat silent. He hadn't touched his drink since Grace left. Shadow curled beside him, ears twitching slightly, like he could feel something broken in the room. Then it started, a low rumble. Soft at first, like distant thunder rolling across Georgia hills. Chairs rattled, coffee rippled. The windows began to shake. Customers stood out on Main Street. Through the fog and tree-lined sidewalks came from military Humvees. Their tires roared against the road. Their lights cut through the mist like searchlights. They pulled up to the cafe. Lined up front, the doors opened together. Out stepped Colonel Richard Gaines. He wore full Marine dress blues, gold buttons shining, white gloves in hand, his face unreadable. Behind him, 24 Marines stood in formation, sharp uniforms, unmistakable presence. They stood outside the cafe, silent, still. Inside, no one moved. Logan Prescott, the inspector, stood near the pastries. His clipboard hung by his side, forgotten. Deborah Lyle stepped back from the counter like it had burned her. The cafe bell jingled once. Colonel Gaines walked in, boots heavy, steps slow. Each one echoed through the quiet cafe. He paused at the center. He looked at Lena, who swallowed hard. He looked at Ray, who had slowly stood. Their eyes met. Ray gave a small nod. The colonel gave something deeper. A salute. Prescott stammered. I didn't know. The colonel didn't raise his voice. You don't need to know someone's name to treat them with basic dignity. He turned to Lena. Is Grace Donnelly here? She was fired, Lena said, for defending Mr. McMillan and his service dog. Colonel Gaines' jaw tightened. She gave our men peace when no one else could, he said. She respected those this nation forgot. Ray cleared his throat. She didn't ask questions, he said. She didn't flinch. She just poured coffee, gave me a place to be human again. A woman near the register wiped a tear. Colonel Gaines nodded. Then turned toward the sidewalk. Colonel Gaines stepped out the door. With a simple hand motion, he gave a signal. The Marines moved in. Not with weapons, but with purpose. 2 Marines stepped behind the counter. They carefully removed the corporate logo from the wall, folded it like a flag. Another brought in a new sign from the Humvee. It was hand-painted in bold white letters. Welcome to Grace's house, where honor is served daily. Deborah Lyle tried to speak. Colonel Gaines stopped her with a look. You made your choice, he said. Now we're making ours. He pulled out his phone, dialed, spoke only a few words. A few seconds later, Lena's phone buzzed. She looked down, confused. It's a message from Fort Granger, she said. They want Grace to come to base headquarters today. Ray let out a deep breath. Shadow stood up beside him, alert. Inside the mason mug, something had changed. Not just the furniture, not just the signs. Something bigger had begun. A reckoning. Far away, Grace sat in her truck at home, keys in hand, engine off, still wearing her cafe clothes, coffee-stained jeans, a faded flannel shirt, shoes worn thin from years of serving. She stared out the windshield, replay after replay of the morning, fired in front of a full cafe, all for standing up for a man and his dog. Now a message from the base. They wanted to meet. She didn't know what for, but deep down, something in her had shifted. It wasn't just about coffee anymore. She turned the key, drove toward Fort Granger. She had made that drive many times before, dropping off muffins, delivering coffee, but this time, it felt different. This time, she wasn't coming as the cafe manager. She was walking through the gate for something else entirely. The base looked like a quiet city, flags flying, orders being shouted in the distance. Uniforms everywhere. She had been here before, as a wife, as a visitor. Now she felt like an outsider again. Colonel Gaines met her at the entrance. No dress blues now, just a simple khaki uniform and a steady look. Grace, he said, shaking her hand. Thanks for coming. She returned the handshake. I'm still not sure why I'm here. Let me show you. They walked down a hallway filled with framed portraits, plaques, and training charts. He stopped at a door labeled Veteran Transition and Wellness Initiative. Inside, the room was plain. Folding chairs. WHITEBOA or DS. Boxes of unused supplies. A few young staff members moved around quietly, setting up therapy mats and unpacking gear. This is our pilot program, he explained. We've been trying to get it running for 2 years. Problem is, it's hard to find someone who gets veterans, not from files, but from real life. Grace crossed her arms. I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree. No, he said, but you built something that worked. You made a place where broken men and women came to feel whole. You did more with coffee and kindness than most programs do with big budgets. Grace didn't answer right away. Colonel Gaines took a step closer. You created a safe place, without even planning to. That's leadership. That's service. Just then, a voice came from the back. Is that her? A young woman stepped forward, late 20s. Long sleeves covered burn scars on her arms and jaw. Her name tag read, Tiffany Rios. She had a golden retriever puppy with her, wearing a red vest labeled in training. Hi, she said softly. I just wanted to say, I saw the video, you and the dog, and the man. She looked down for a moment. I haven't been inside a cafe since I got home, but I think I could sit in a place you run. Grace blinked. Something shifted inside her. The colonel smiled. We want to offer you a position, not as a figurehead, as the director of this center. Grace's eyes widened. You're serious? As a heart attack, you'll lead the space, build the team, set the tone. You already know what works. She looked at Tiffany again. Then she thought of Ray. Shadow? All the quiet mornings at the cafe where healing had happened in silence. She nodded slowly. I'll do it. Colonel Gaines smiled. Then let's get started. That night, Grace stood alone in the empty wellness. Center. The walls were bare, the floors a little scuffed, but the air felt different, like something sacred had begun. She reached into her bag, pulled out an old photo. Michael, her husband, sitting outside the cafe, coffee in hand, boots up, laughing. She pinned the photo to the wall. No frame, no speech, just memory. And purpose. Asterisk. Word spread fast. By the end of the week, the new veteran transition and wellness center at Fort Granger wasn't just a quiet program anymore. It had come alive. Veterans who hadn't been on base in years showed up. Young soldiers brought their spouses. Even the local newspaper, the Mason Herald, ran a front-page story from Café to Command. How Grace Donnelly is rebuilding trust, one cup at a time. But Grace didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't bring in guest speakers or fancy banners. She simply kept doing what she had always done. She paid attention. She remembered names. She put a whiteboard near the coffee pot that read, "Who needs a ride? Who needs a listener?" She let dogs nap in therapy rooms without asking questions. She used the same notebook from her cafe days, kept notes on each veteran who walked in. Some days were quiet. Some were hard. Some were just silence and coffee, refills. But something powerful was growing. A place where pain wasn't hidden. And healing didn't need to be loud. Ray came often now. Shadow walked in like he owned the place. Straight to his favorite spot in the corner. Tiffany Rio showed up every Tuesday. She still didn't speak in group sessions, but she had started sketching again. Dogs, hands, soldiers coming home. Lena, the young barista from the Mason Mug, visited. Every Friday. She brought coffee, of course, but also laughter. And whenever Grace needed help with anything from choosing paint to fixing the website, Lena was always the first to help. But not everyone was happy. Some officials questioned why. Someone with no degree was running a federal project. Auditors showed up in suits. They brought clipboards, asked hard questions, checked every filter on the coffee machine. One of them finally asked Grace directly, "What licenses do you have to counsel veterans?" Grace looked at him calmly. "I don't have certifications," she said. "Just consistency and kindness." The man didn't reply, just made a note. A week later, Grace received a letter. The wellness center was being considered for national expansion. Colonel Gaines called it a victory. Grace just called it humbling. Still, part of her missed the cafe. One afternoon, she drove across town without telling anyone. She walked into the Mason Mug. Lena was behind the counter. "You're famous now," she joked, sliding her a cup. "I'm just here for coffee," Grace said, smiling. The cafe looked different. Photos of veterans lined the walls. Ray, Tiffany, others. A new sign had been hung near the counter, Grace's Corner, where no one sits alone. Later that day, Grace spoke at a small fundraiser for military families. It was a simple event. Homemade posters, folding chairs, kids with crayons. She stood at the mic, no notes in hand. "I didn't plan to run a program," she said. "I just refused to kick out a man and his dog." The crowd went silent, then clapped out loud, long, real. In the back, Ray stood quietly, a silver star pinned to his chest. He gave her a slow, proud salute. That night, Grace returned to the wellness center. She walked to the photo wall and added one more picture. It showed the cafe the day after the Marines came, veterans shoulder to shoulder, dogs under the tables, coffee in every hand. No shame, no fear, just connection. She taped a small card beneath it. "Legacy isn't what we build for ourselves. It's what we protect in others." In that quiet moment, she finally understood. The cafe hadn't closed. It had simply changed shape. 3 weeks after the fundraiser, a letter arrived. It came in a thick envelope, stamped with gold. Department of Defense. Colonel Gaines handed it to her in person. They stood in her office, the hum of quiet conversations in the background. "You'll want to sit for this," he said. She opened the envelope slowly. She read the first line, then again, then a third time. "You are hereby nominated for the National Civilian Commendation for distinguished service to veterans." Her mouth opened slightly. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. Colonel Gaines chuckled. "That's exactly why you're getting it." The letter included something else. An invitation, not just to attend the ceremony in Washington, but to speak at the National Veterans Advocacy Conference. Grace's knees went weak. I'm not a public speaker. You are now. The day she left for D.C., she packed light. Just one blazer, Michael's old watch, and her cafe notebook, filled with names, birthdays, and soft reminders like, Tiffany prefers tea. Don't ask Ray about May 15th. That notebook held more weight than any resume ever could. At the airport, someone called her name. Need a ride, Miss Donnelly? She turned. It was Ray MC Millen. In full dress blues. Shadow calm beside him. The base assigned me to escort you, he said with a proud grin. Grace laughed, nerves catching her breath. You clean up pretty well. He smirked. You're the one about to speak to the Pentagon. The ballroom in Washington was bigger than Grace had imagined. White tablecloths, shining lights, cameras pointing from every corner. Her name glowed behind the podium in elegant letters. She stepped up to speak. Her voice was soft, but the room leaned in. I'm not a general, not a doctor. I didn't write policies, she began. I ran a small cafe near a military base. I served coffee. I listened. She paused. In that little space, I saw something sacred. Veterans didn't come for answers. They came for presence. They didn't need to be fixed. They just needed to be seen. People nodded. Some wiped away tears. One day, I got fired for letting a man sit with his service dog. That was the day everything changed. But really, it was never about coffee. It was about dignity. The room erupted into applause. Thunderous, deep, real. In the back, Ray stood tall. He didn't cheer or clap. He just nodded. Like a soldier hearing his orders. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the Pentagon, Grace stepped outside for air. A man in a gray suit approached quietly, white beard, kind eyes, thin glasses. You don't remember me, do you? He asked. She looked at him closely. Something stirred. He pulled out an old photo, grainy, faded. It was her husband Michael, sitting outside the cafe with an older man in uniform. That's me, the man said. Your husband served me coffee the day I got my discharge. You smiled, said nothing. It was the first time I felt like myself again. He handed her the photo. It's yours now. She took it with shaking hands, words caught in her throat. Back home, Mason held a celebration, but Grace didn't go straight there. She returned to the wellness center first. It was late. A few veterans sat near the fire pit outside. Grace walked to the photo wall. She reached into her bag and added one last picture, a snapshot of the standing ovation she received at the conference. Beside it, she taped the photo the old man had given her, Michael and the soldier outside the cafe. Below it, she wrote, Honor grows where kindness is consistent. She turned to leave, but the door opened. A young man stepped in, nervous eyes, shaky hands. He looked like he was holding something heavy inside. Is this the place for people like us? He asked. Grace smiled gently. No, son, she said. This is the place for people like all of us. And just like that, her circle wasn't just full. It was open. In today's busy world, it's easy to miss the quiet moments, the silent waitress, the trembling veteran, the tail of a service dog resting beneath the table. But sometimes, those small things are the ones that change everything. Grace Donnelly never wore a uniform. She never held rank, but she protected something sacred, dignity, and by doing so, she reminded us all, honor is not earned just once. It must be defended every single day. What happened in that small cafe in Mason, Georgia, might seem rare, but maybe it shouldn't be. How many Graces have we walked past without seeing? How many veterans have we thanked only with words, not actions? In this divided world, her story asks a simple question. Would I have stood up like she did? Have I ever stayed silent when I should have spoken? We want to hear from you. Have you ever seen a quiet act of courage? Or maybe you were the one someone showed kindness to. Share your story in the comments below. Your words might inspire someone else to take a stand, even when it's hard. Thank you for spending time with us today. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in quiet strength. Here at Taqnix, we tell stories that matter, stories that honor not just uniforms, but the people behind them. Because sometimes the strongest salute is the one given without raising a hand.